Listening is one of 7 principles you list on your website around improvisation as it relates to business. I'd like to read that list and talk to you
Okay.
about some of those. One
Yeah.
is divergent thinking, 2 is listening, 3 is negotiation, 4 is strategic intuition, 5 is decision making, 6 is problem solving, 7 is teamwork. Which one of those is your favorite?
I think, see, this is where, what was the second one that you read? What were the first two? What
The
was the,
second one was listening, Coop.
oh,
Listening.
yeah, what? I thought that was three. You see, and the crazy thing is I am listening. I just can't, like, I'm sure if my life insurance agent is watching this, he's like, oh my God, like, I'm gonna have to up his premium. Because don't they do like a memory test to, like when you get life insurance? I don't know.
I, I don't remember.
Maybe you have the same problem.
Yeah.
I know, but there was negotiation was in there, but there was something
Oh,
else.
sure. I
But
can read them again to you.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, really.
Divergent thinking is 1. Listening is 2. Negotiation is 3. Strategic intuition is 4. Decision making is 5. 6 is problem solving. And 7 is teamwork. Do any of those stand out as your favorite?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I didn't like the ones up front, but teamwork is kind of the key. Um, at the end of the day, to me, like, and I said this at the beginning of the session, we all work in teams. I don't know personally, I don't know anybody that like sits in their office and just is writing stuff on a piece of paper or typing something. And maybe there probably are. I mean, but most of us are always kind of having to accomplish things, get to some result as a team, like with other people,
Mhm.
and I actually think it's really good in schools today. There is like they work on projects together, whether it's with uh, people that are paired up or a larger group. And I think that's helping kids getting ready for the real world, right? And whatever they decide to do in their life. My son is an acting major. Um, he's constantly, I mean, being on stage, you're constantly working with other people, right? And
Yeah.
they have to learn how to work together, communicate, collaborate, all of this stuff. So I think teamwork to me, it all boils down to kind of how you work as a team.
Now, I can read the list again to you if you need to, but I'm also curious which one is the hardest for you?
Of those,
Yeah.
well, personally, maybe negotiation is one of the hardest. Um, in that, like, especially personal, like I always wish I had an agent. I like having an agent, at least for me, for personal stuff. But I think on the negotiation side, there's, there becomes, when you're dealing with people and individuals, I think that's where I may tend to struggle. Like I'll be a little vulnerable. Like I might feel bad for other people, or that if I'm
Mm.
as long as it doesn't become like a win-lose negotiation, I'm better. If it feels like somebody's losing, either if I feel like I'm losing in a negotiation, I'm going to get defensive. And if I feel like I'm winning, I'm feeling bad for the other person. So I think that's the harder part. And I think when I talk about negotiation in business, um, it's really, and I think strategic thinking was in there, or
Strategic intuition. Yeah, what is that?
intuition. Right. So I think, strategic intuition is, and divergent thinking comes into this too. And this is where, that's why I really think number 7 is probably teamwork, because I think in the end, like it all comes down to how you work with a team. Like divergent thinking is, and this is where I think negotiation and this one concept, also strategic intuition, is allowing other ideas to come into your mind and see where you can take those, right? So I think a lot of times with, and problem solving is on there too. It kind of all comes down to, how do you take information from other people which are going to have different ideas than you have? How do you take that in, not get defensive or have an ego about your ideas, and use that to get to a result, whatever that is. So one of the things I talk about a lot in my training and coaching is about Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Have we talked about that before?
I don't know.
So it's a really great, but I recommend everybody get that book, because I think he sums up really well how the base, if teams either lack one of these 5 things, that they're going to struggle. If they have these, if they're functional with these 5 items, then they're going to be successful. So, and it ends up, results is the tip of the triangle. So at the base is you have to have trust. Like, team members have to have trust in each other. And the trust he talks about is not that, hey, Adam, you and I scheduled this interview and you trusted that I'm going to show up. Right. That's good trust to have. Like, we want to know that, hey, if I give somebody a task, that they're going to follow through, and that I don't have to stay on top of them, be a micromanager. The other type of trust, though, is like implicit trust, that if I make a mistake, and we already established that I fail at a lot of things, so if I make a mistake and fail, that my team members will have my back. Like, they're not going to point fingers. They're not going to judge me. So I know I can try different things and say things, and my team will have my back. And that leads you to then, as a team, being able to have good conflict, real healthy conflict, where you can debate about ideas. And then at some point, somebody's going to have to make a decision. And once you debate about that idea, someone makes a decision, then everybody will more likely commit to that decision. So he talks about the spectrums of conflict. There's no conflict, where everybody gets in a room, somebody says something, everyone's like, yep, sounds great. And then they leave the room and like, oh my God, that's the stupidest idea. I don't know why we're going to do that. Right. And they're not committing to it. The other side is like harsh conflict, the people yelling, being rude to each other, bullying. Like, that's not good either, because then people won't talk. They're not, if I say something and someone yells at me, I'm going to be like, okay, do what you want to do. I'm not opening my mouth. Either of those sides, you really don't get good commitment. But if I'm able to share my ideas, so back to your set list, if you took the collaborative approach and I said, hey, I want the order, this is the 1 through 12 order I want, and you picked a different one, at least I was like, well, I had my chance to influence Adam. He was the decision maker. So I'll still buy in. Like, it's not the order I picked, but I'll be open to trying the order Adam liked.
Okay, this came up. I'll actually give you a solid example. One of the songs that I really wanted to sing, it's kind of like fueled me in wanting to have this concert at all, was "I'm Still Standing," because of the movie Sing, and because of the the gorilla playing "I'm Still Standing" and his dad loving him and all. It made me cry. Yeah. I was like, I want to be that gorilla. I want to do this song. I want that moment for me. So I brought in our voice teacher, who's also a pianist, and I said, I'd like you to guest on this. So I'd like you to do a couple songs with us. I'm going to give you a couple, but you can't have "I'm Still Standing." And she said, well, that's funny, because that was the song I wanted. And so I was like, no. But, I with a little reflection, I said, you know what? I don't need to be that gorilla. I'm doing all the other songs. I'm going to be okay. She really wants to do this song, and I gave it to her. I let her have the song that was as a result, the concert was great. She was perfect for that. It made the concert better by my giving her that song.
Right. Yeah. So and that's even a better example for getting higher in the triangle. Is the next is holding each other accountable. So that if everybody's committing to stuff, teams are more likely to hold each other accountable to the results, not your ego. So the result for you is having a great, fun concert, whatever your goals of that were, right? With the audience is engaged, and you said everybody was singing along. That was the goal, and you met that goal, and your ego didn't get in the way, though. So it's not about ego. It's not about an individual, like, what am I going to get out of it, right? So you could have taken the route that, no, this is my song. I'm doing it, and being real egotistical about it. And then maybe the person coming in for a couple of songs wouldn't have been as engaged and excited, right? And it wouldn't have went over that well. Even though you got your song, it still wasn't as good of a show as it could have been, right? She was now excited, she kicked butt doing it, and and it made the whole thing better than it would have if she didn't sing it,
Yeah.
potentially. Right. Yeah.
This is all easy to see, or easier to see, in rock and roll situations where there's a real obvious business model in play. You know, I find it interesting as you were talking. I'm thinking about jazz, which is really opaque to most people. They don't understand it at all. And what's funny to me is all of this stuff you're talking about is actually happening in jazz, but it's happening wordlessly.
Right.
No one is. I don't even think a lot of jazz musicians even know this stuff is going on, but it's all happening in real time during the music, the negotiation, the trust, the back and forth. It's just happening through music. And I think anyone who wants to do improvisation in music of any kind would be well advised to know what they are doing through your kind of work, so that they can start to see, oh, like when I tried this idea on the piano and the saxophone player didn't follow me, you know, I maybe needed to be listening to the saxophone player instead of saying, well, this is a great idea, sax player. I'm going to drown you out.
No, that's a perfect example of what could happen with improv comedy with you. Like, right, like you're playing something and you don't get the connection that you thought you should get from the sax player. And so you have two choices. Either, okay, he didn't pick that up, so, or she, like, so I'm going to go with them, whatever they're doing, rather than, you know, and I don't know the jazz part, but if the sax player is doing one thing and you're doing another, it's going to sound bad, right? Somebody in there has to lead and follow,
Yeah.
right, all the time, and you're constantly giving that I don't want to call it power, but that role of leading and following. It's constantly going back and forth, and it's because you guys are listening to each other, and it sounds better because you're more connected and not taking, like, even if you expected that sax player to take your cue and they didn't, you have to let that go and move in the direction that the band is playing, and not stick to your, nope, I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to make sure the sax player gets, and I'll play louder next time, or whatever you do to try to get their attention, you know. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing on stage. Like, you have an idea of where you want to go with a scene, but as soon as someone does something different, you have to throw that agenda away and go with wherever they went and respond to it. And then they're doing the same thing, and it's constantly happening back and forth. And in business, it's the same thing. Like, you go into meetings, or you have an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. And this is why I tell people all the time, because in business, everyone's like, you need an agenda for the meeting, and we got to stick to the agenda. And I'm like, no, you really don't have to stick to the agenda. The agenda is not the important thing. That it's a guide for you, but the goal, whatever the goal of the meeting is really what we need to stick to. And like today, it happened. So I had a meeting. Somebody sent an email around before that meeting about one of the topics, and that happened to be fourth on the agenda. Well, I got into the meeting and I'm like, you know what? This topic is fourth on the agenda, but Randy brought up this concept before the meeting. I think we need to talk about it now. And everyone's like, oh yeah, great. We really need to spend time on that. And what typically happens in meetings is you get to the last thing on the agenda and you run out of time. So,
Right.
so I switched the agenda on the fly because I could feel and I could sense that we needed to hit that topic, and everybody should be okay, rather than being like, nope, it says right here on that PowerPoint slide that we were talking about this topic first. Who cares? Like, that's not the goal, to follow an agenda. It's to get to the result. And your jazz band, your result is having like beautiful music that the crowd enjoys, or if you're playing for yourselves, that you guys enjoy, right?
Right. I'm glad you put it that way, because you were talking about someone has to lead and someone has to follow. And this may be applicable in different levels in business too. Yeah, maybe someone has to lead and someone has to follow. That's a good jazz band where someone knows when to lead and when to follow. But there's great jazz band too. And that's when it no longer is about who's leading. That's when everybody has the same goal in mind and people just contribute to this music more organically. And there's no leading and following. It's just everybody's weaving.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I end a lot of my emails in business with one team, one goal, right? So we are one team and we have one goal. And it really doesn't matter. Like, people in business get caught up about what their role is. Like, this is my job title, I do this stuff. and this person does this. And it's really hard. I mean, the HR systems that we have really are built around, having people with job titles and responsibilities. And it's a way to rate people, how are they doing against other people in their same job title. So I get it. I mean, I know why it's there, but it doesn't feed into, I wish they would all just listen to me and say, like, we have to be one team regardless. Like, I would love to have no titles in an organization. We're all team members and we all bring skills to that team. And whatever team you're on, you have a goal. To your point, how do we mesh together? And what do we each have to do to achieve that goal? And that's in the end, like, if I went through every improv skill that I talk about, that is what we're trying to do. Like, you're using these skills so that we could more easily get to the goals. And I do believe, like, I will say, I tell people I'm not trying to turn you into a comedian, but you should have fun at work, right? I mean, we're at work more than we are any other place, right? So why are we so serious? Have a good time, relax, right?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's take the jazz analogy one step further. Let's say the
Okay.
band is a great jazz ensemble and they're playing in a venue where the venue is sabotaging them, where all the owner really wants to do is sell beer, and where they cut the lights out on them accidentally, or where people are talking in the audience. There are businesses in which the team could be a great team and could mesh, but the higher ups sometimes end up sabotaging the efforts. Can you talk about how do you thrive in an environment like that?
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's like the ultimate question, right? And I think this is not easy. This is probably the hardest. And, like, even all the things I talk about, teamwork, and, don't worry about your title. It's about, meshing with your team and bringing skills. But we're still tied to two things often. It's, I want to raise, and this manager over here that I report to is the one giving my raise, not you, who is one of my team members. And two, we want promotions, right? So, in the way to get promotions, you got to get noticed somehow, right? And oftentimes you got to do things more based on your ego to stand out from the crowd. So it's a really challenging thing. Now I'm further along in my career, and it's easier for me where I don't give a crap anymore, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to act this way, and if you want to promote me and give me a raise, then great. If you don't, maybe this isn't the right place for me to be working. Like, if you don't like how I operate and in this culture, then maybe I'm not the best fit for this organization. And I totally understand. This is years of experience and comfort and confidence in my ability that I can go somewhere else and work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe, like, your attitude has to be about for the better of the team. And if you are thinking about the team, people are going to want, like, it's going to come across. It might take a little while, and it might take a few managers to get through this, but it will come across. Everybody's going to want to work with you, and that's going to be part of that's going to get back to your management, and they'll start to see. They might not even understand it, but they're going to be like, I don't know why, this guy never stands out and does anything. He just blends in with the crowd, but everybody wants them on their team. Like, they're going to at some point, they're going to have to do something, or hopefully that manager or those leaders are like, what is going on with this person? Because we want everybody to be like that. So let's figure it out, and then maybe they'll come around to it. But I really do. It's a hard thing, and you got to fight the urge of stepping out and being the one to stand out from the crowd. And so this was an example that happened today. So I'm the program leader for this major project in the organization. So there was a meeting with our executive leadership about how things were going. Now, typically in any other organization, I would be the one, as the program lead, I should be doing that. And I knew, like, the executive, like, up the line from me, I think he has that kind of attitude and would expect me to do that. But I got to that point in the meeting, and we had like a pre-meeting prepping for this meeting, and there was another gentleman on the business side that's kind of leading the effort, and we decided we were passing it off to him, right? And so we got to that point in the meeting. I said, okay, and I won't use names, Joe, can you talk us through where we are in the program? And he took it over, and like halfway through he's like, yeah, with Coop's leadership we were able to do XYZ. So it does come out, right? People recognize. So I didn't have to be the one presenting to, kind of stand up in front of everybody like I'm the best, and without me, this project would be falling apart. Like my teammates kind of know what I put into it, and they express that in the meeting. So you just have to give, a lot of this is trust, right? Like trust that other people are going to do the right thing. Sometimes they don't though, right? And my overall attitude, and it goes back to the results and not ego. It's like, I don't care. This is just the attitude I have. I don't care who gives the message. I just want that message to get across, right? So if I have a great idea at work, and this in one organization, this happened to me all the time. Like I would be trying to convince my manager like of some process we had to do. They would be like, nah, I don't think so. Let's not present it up, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden one day that we're in a meeting and she's like, you know what? I had this great idea. We did. and so I had two paths that I can go. Like, so to me, one path would have been pissed and like now not wanting to do it and complaining to all my coworkers and maybe complaining to that person, maybe leaving the organization, right? But I took what I think is the improv path, is like going with the flow. She got the message across. Yeah, so she's taking credit for it. But you know what? What I wanted was us to implement that process. And it was happening. So great. Let's go for it. Let's move it forward.
And this is all marvelous. This is terrific
Yeah.
stuff, and it's very applicable to anyone who is in a vulnerable position as an actor or a musician might be, where you feel like you really have to shine or no one's going to listen to you. And in fact, sometimes that isn't the case. Sometimes the situation you engender will raise you up as opposed to you having to raise
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So like, you talked about meshing. One of the keys in improv is one, well, two things. One, you're never wrong. So if you're, whatever you say or do, it was the right thing to do, and your other actors will have your back. Probably same thing in music. Like whatever you do, if you guys are meshing, the other musicians kind of know how to play along with that, right?
Yeah.
The next thing is like, no one, it was always like we were always trying to prop up the other actors. So yeah, we're doing comedy. Our goal is to make the audience laugh, right? I mean, that plain and simple. But we never wanted to be the one to get the laugh. It was always like, what can I do? And we're doing it's like happening light speed, but what can I do based on what just happened on stage? What can I do that might give Adam, put him in a position where he would just kill it and do something that would get and you're doing the same thing to me. Like, okay, all right, this just happened. What can I do now to put Coop in a position where he can get the big laugh? So nobody's trying to get the laugh. And when you're operating like that, it's beautiful, right? I mean, it's comfortable. You want to be with these people all the time. And that's what I was saying, like with work, you're at work all the time. Don't you want to work with a great team?
I'm struck by this idea you mentioned about never being the one who gets the laugh, always setting someone up for the laugh.
Yeah.
I had a similar remarkable discovery in jazz playing. I've had the good fortune to be able to play jazz with friends over the last 10 years in a house of a friend of ours that puts us together. And I have for years and years obsessed about being able to play solos. I can't play solos. I'm trying to play solos. I want to get better. I want to get better. And somewhere along the line, enough of the blocks clicked in that I realized if I solo in a way that makes that bass player sound good, all of a sudden, like if I'm like, how can I time it right to make him sound amazing? Like, what does
Right.
my solo have to do to make this bass player sound twice as good as he is? All of a sudden, everybody's
You have
talking about
this
how
awesome
good
solo.
I sound,
Right, right.
right? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the focus is not on what I have tried I'm playing a great solo, and all that results in is people are like, yeah, listen to you go. there you go. But when I make the bass player sound good, he's like, wow, I feel great. And then he ups it for me. And then all of a sudden the music is better as opposed to I'm better.
That's exactly. So you've experienced it. That's exactly
Yes.
it. And that's what, like, I ask people, like, or people that would see our show and have seen improv comedy, they have, if they see a really good troupe, it's hard to tell like who is the best, right? It's
Right.
like, well, you know, they were so good with this, but then that person was so good here, and then that, yeah, they were all just good, and it seemed like they kind of had it scripted, right? I mean, that those when you hear that, it's like, okay, the group is clicking, and the same thing for you, and that's because none of us were trying to grandstand. If you have someone that's trying to grandstand, it's obvious. Like,
Yeah.
they're always popping up and trying to get the big laugh, and all the other actors kind of then, just because of how you do it, is you have to kind of go with what's happening on stage. So if somebody's trying to stand out, you have to kind of move with that. You can't really fight it and deny that person, right?
If you're
And but
unfortunate enough to be on stage with Robin Williams, for instance.
it's, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, he's my like all-time favorite comedian. I mean, just the brilliant mind that he had is
Yeah.
unmatched. Yeah.
But you couldn't stand against it if you were up there with him. I mean, you know, I
Well,
heard,
I wonder, like, I haven't seen, that's a good question, because I don't think I've seen like him in with an improv troupe. Like, I've only really seen him, other than movies, but his stand up is kind of him. Although, he would riff a lot with, he had that thing with Billy Crystal and Whoopi
yeah,
Goldberg, and they would do a really good job, you know, I think passing things back. But he probably stood out more because he's just who he is. But
yeah.
but I think in an improv troupe, I wonder how he was in that setting.
Well,
Like,
I happened to catch an interview with him and Steve Martin. They were both on stage together, and I was listening. And Steve Martin, for God's sakes, right?
yeah,
Well, it was very hard for poor Steve Martin
to get
because,
word in.
I mean, yeah, or you could kind of hear him trying to, like, should I be funny now? I don't know, and he tries a little bit, but it's just Robin Williams is just Robin Williams, and
Just so powerful.
he
Yeah.
just couldn't hack it. I mean, and Steve Martin just kind of wisely toned it down and made the appropriate crack where he could.
Exactly. Right. That's what you have to do. It's
Right.